So in today's content, we're going to cover the stages of pet grief. Now, the stages of pet grief were conceptualised by Dr. Wallace Seif in the 80s, and he wrote the book The Loss of a Pet. He then went on to found the Association for Pet Loss and Bereavement, a wonderful non-profit organisation that has been supporting grieving pet guardians for a number of years now. Now, the stages of pet grief, they stemmed from the stages of human grief that were created by Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross back in the 50s and the 60s. Now, as time's gone on, stage theory in regard to grief has been maligned. It's been pushed to the side. People don't like it. The reason why people don't like it is because it's been misinterpreted. It's been misunderstood, and it may be poorly applied. Because if you just apply stage theory to a grieving person without any in-depth or further explanation or any other counselling modalities such as ACT, stage theory in its own isn't enough. It's important to remember that stage theory is a non-linear process. It's non-sequential. It's very circular. There is no expectation or understanding that when grieving the loss of our pets, we go through each stage 1, followed by 2, followed by 3, 4, and lastly 5. The first stage of pet grief, which is shock, disbelief and denial, which we'll cover shortly, is typically always first. The last stage of pet grief, resolution or integration, is always last. But there are 3 centre stages of grief, which may appear or they may not appear. They may always be there, they may appear, they may go away, they may come back again. Now, the purpose and the usefulness of stage theory is to give you a roadmap of what might be coming. It also helps to validate and to normalise and to naturalise your feelings. You might think that you're going absolutely crazy because you're feeling so much anger, or you're feeling so much guilt, or you keep going into these bouts of denial or disbelief and you can't quite understand why. You start questioning your sanity. You start wondering, is there anything else going on, some kind of pathology? When in fact, you're grieving. And remember, grief, as intense as it is, it's a normal, healthy, emotional process that helps us deal with something or someone who we've lost, who we loved very much. There is, of course, some times where normal grief can become complicated grief. And we spoke about complicated grief in our most recent Saturday night session. And without going into too much detail, the main differences between normal and complicated grief is normal grief over time should witness the reduction of pain and suffering. Whereas with complicated grief, there is no such reduction. There can be many peaks and troughs. Ultimately, down the track, at any time, and there's no time frames in relation to grief, the intensity of the grief and the associated emotions may just be as bad as day one. So it's important to recognise where you are and how you're grieving. Because if you recognise that, then you can maybe then choose to take appropriate action in order to try and help, try and assist you in some way. All starts with a good degree of understanding about where you're at, knowing what the issue is, knowing what it is that you're dealing with, knowing the mountain that you're going to climb before you embark upon it. You can't conquer something unless you know enough about it. Okay? So the stages of pet grief then. So there are 5. And within some of these, they're broken down into some subcategories. So as I stated earlier on, the first stage of pet grief is shock, disbelief, and denial. We've lost something we love very much. We've lost something that gave us an emotional support mechanism. Could it be the love of our life? It could be the only living thing that we trusted, that we loved. that loved us. It gave us emotional stability, mutual support, independence, exercise, companionship. Maybe filled a spiritual void. And you were used to feeling a certain way. You've come home from a day's work, or you've come back from somewhere, or maybe just spending time around the house. You see your pet and there's a chemical release, and you're used to feeling a certain way in relation to that. And then suddenly, when your pet dies, you no longer have it. And the shock of not having that is very confronting. It's that muscle memory, emotional muscle memory. Your body gets used to doing certain things like standing up, sitting down, laying down in bed, brushing your teeth. Your emotions get used to feeling a certain way. When you can no longer act in a physical way, it's distressing because of a disability or an injury. When you can no longer feel something in an emotional context, you feel the same levels of devastation. And it's very confronting. And it's shocking. Your world as you know it has been turned on its head. Nothing seems the same. Things look different. Things smell different. Food tastes different. You look around and you think, how can people be carrying on when I'm in the depths of emotional despair? Disbelief is an element of the first stage. I can't believe this has happened. How could this have happened? In this pure state of not being able to confront or understand this world that I'm now in. Because yesterday I was happy. Things were normal. And now today, everything's different. And it takes time for us to start to understand and appreciate and believe this new reality. Denial. That's where you know your pet has died. But you don't want to believe it. You don't want to admit to it. Of course they're not dead. My pet's at home on the pet bed or on the sofa. Everything's normal. Because you don't want to believe it. It's painful. It's confronting. The reality of knowing that someone you love very much is no longer here is extremely painful and confronting. And so denial is something that we may dip in and out of. And do you know what? It gives our mind a little bit of a break from the emotional onslaught. Too much denial isn't great because we do have to start acknowledging the state of play. We do have to start accepting and acknowledging that our pet is dead. But some denial, it gives us a little bit of an emotional break. So if you are in denial about it, that's okay from time to time. It's your mind's way of trying to protect you. And that's what emotions are. This rumination and thoughts that's going on in your head throughout your pet grief journey. Yeah, it may not be very helpful at times, but your mind is trying to protect you. It's always trying to find solutions. That's what it is. It's a computer. It's a problem-solving machine. It thinks it knows what's best for you. Sometimes it doesn't. And that's why there's things we can do in order to try and reset and try and break away and unhook from painful thoughts, feelings, and rumination. And there's methods that we can do that. So the second stage of pet grief that you may encounter at some point, and remember the second, third, and fourth are those things that are circular, non-linear, non-sequential. It comes in three. Once again, anger, alienation, and distancing. When we lose something we love very much, it could well be that we're angry. We're angry at the world. This sucks. This isn't fair. My pet was young, or my pet didn't deserve to die. I don't deserve this. Or my pet was old. Why didn't I get any longer with them? Why couldn't they have lived forever? What did they ever do wrong? And anger is a very easy emotion to adopt. Doesn't take much restraint. Could be angry at a person. Perhaps a person has acted in a negligent manner, left the door open, or used a motor vehicle in some way that was devastating to your circumstances. Maybe we're angry at the vet clinic for the actions they took or which they didn't take in regard to surgery, euthanasia, or the prescription of medications. We can also be very angry at ourselves because we can point the finger at many people, or we may be able to restrain ourselves from pointing our finger at many people, but pointing at ourselves is very easy. We can all do that. We can beat ourselves up quite severely when we're dealing with pet grief. And that anger turned inwards often becomes unmerited guilt. And guilt is the third stage of pet grief. So in addition to anger, you have alienation. Okay, dealing with the loss. I just want to separate myself from other people, from the world. I need to close down. I need to close off. I want to shut myself away. I'm going through a period of mourning, through bereavement. I feel like I just want to be on my own at this point. And if you are there, that's perfectly natural and understandable. You need time to heal. You need time to even think about healing. So some anger, some alienation is completely normal and expected. Distancing, same rules apply. Distance myself from loved ones, from friends and from family, from the things that I used to do, the things I used to enjoy. I don't want to be doing those things at the moment. I'm going through a real tough time. I'm wrapping myself up in order to try and process this huge thing that's occurred to me right now. I don't want to be around places and people, the same routine, they're triggering. I need a break. The third stage of pet grief is guilt. And guilt appears in so many different ways, and it's probably the most common emotion experienced by grieving pet guardians. And guilt is broken down into two: merited guilt and unmerited guilt. 99% of the time is unmerited, but it's because we feel like we have so much control and we have this bond with our pets where we develop a sixth sense, that we think that we know their needs and wants and psychological and mental condition at any given time. We sign this unwritten contract that we're going to be there for them, we're going to look after them and make all the right decisions. But we only have so much control in life. And to be human is to be fallible and to make mistakes. We don't actually control as much as what we think we do. So maybe we're guilty about euthanasia remorse. Did I act too soon? Did I act soon enough? I wish I'd have got these medications. I wish I'd have got that medications. Why didn't I go to another vet? Why did I do this? We start beating ourselves up. All the shouldas and wouldas and couldas. And then we get stuck in this real cycle of rumination that's very harmful and very upsetting. And this is all about working with self-compassion and self-kindness. And again, there's things that can be done. There's methods that can be suggested in order to try and break that pattern. One of which sometimes is to look upon your situation through the eyes of someone else. If you were looking at someone dealing with exactly the same things as you, and they had to make the same decisions under the same circumstances, could you allow for at least some compassion, some kindness? And if your friend or family member, if they were going through what you're going through right now, what would you say to them? What would you do? Could you extend a kind word or an arm around the shoulder? If so, can you extend those things to yourself? And remember, self-compassion and self-kindness begins with a thought, and then it progresses to kind words. Acknowledge your pain and respond with kindness. This really hurts right now. I feel really guilty about what happened. And that's okay. I did my best. I did what I could. It doesn't change the love that I shared and continue to share with my pet. The decisions made towards the end of a relationship do not define the years of the loving bond that you shared. And it's important to remember that. There are, of course, some times where there's merited guilt. where a pet parent has performed a negligent act. They've done something or they failed to do something that's directly led to the death of their pet. So we've left the door open. Maybe we've hit our pet with our car, or we've done something that's led directly to their death. And I can't say to you, you're not responsible, because you know that's not the truth. You have to try and manage that responsibility with the same levels of compassion and kindness, or maybe to a greater extent. You never did anything deliberately to harm your pet. It's always important to remember that. Throughout the life of your pet, you deliberately acted in their best interest with love in your heart. You did not intend to hurt your pet. Yes, it happened, but it was a gravely unfortunate consequence of an action. You can't lock yourself in an emotional prison for the rest of your life based on one action. Okay? The fourth stage of pet grief is depression. And think sadness. I'm not talking clinical depression. Sadness is probably something that underpins pet grief from day one till day whenever. And again, remember, no time frames. It's incredibly sad. They bring us so much. All the things we spoke about earlier in the conversation: companionship, love, loyalty, pure, unconditional love, based on everything but spoken word. And that's what makes it so beautiful. They don't judge us. They don't hurt us. They don't traumatize us. They don't abandon us. They don't neglect us. There's a mutual meeting of needs. So it's awfully sad. It's important to remember the difference between grief, sadness, which you would expect, and depression. If you feel like things are never improving with your sadness, if you cannot function due to overwhelming sadness after a period of time, if you're really noticing that this dark cloud can't shift, then I can't stress enough to go and see a mental health professional, maybe starting with your general practitioner to see if you can get a referral, or if you know a good psychologist who can maybe help you out in regard to that. You don't have to suffer on your own. Please reach out for some help, okay? So last stage of pet grief, which is always last, is resolution. Used to be called closure. But we don't close anything with grief. We don't close a door. On Monday, we're the person that we are. Our pet dies that night. We're not a different person on a Tuesday. We're still that loving person that's capable of bonding. That relationship is ongoing. It's everlasting. That love is an energy. It's now within us. Our grief is love without home. We can bring it back home. That love can be projected forward in our future endeavours, in future relationships, continuation of the loving bond. We don't move on. We don't close. We move forward. We integrate. We learn to carry the weight. We learn to grow around the huge hole that's in our existence. Remember, you're more than your grief. Your grief is a significant part of you, but you're more than that. You're a living, breathing, loving, caring person that's capable of so much. You are that person that your pet knew you to be. You are still that person. Try and move forward and integrate with love. I look forward to seeing you in person at a group session really soon. You take care.